Here we are, Matt. I mean, literally, we just recorded an episode last week. We're here again. Can you believe it?
Woohoo! It's me!
Oh man, Matt. Really? You're gonna already start with the voices?
Yeah, it's me, Mario, or Mattluigi.
Oh, Matt. You know, Matt. I expect better from you. You know, we're both part of that blue wave. I expected you to not, be putting on these offensive Italian stereotypes for the characters we love so much, Matt. You know, that is so disrespectful, Matt, that you decided to do those Italian stereotypes without me. Let's go!
It's a Framewreck!
What a story, Mark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to be doing this voice the whole time. I'm kidding. I'm not going to actually be doing that. And I'm going to take this off before it takes all my little peach fuzz hairs off my mustache right there. Because that is poster tack that I don't.
Oh, no.
That's the only thing I had to stick the mustache onto my face. How you doing, Matt? It feels like it was just yesterday that we recorded our Dungeons
Pretty
and Dragons
close. Pretty close. But no, we got another fun movie in store, so I'm excited to get to talk about this movie from my childhood. I'm going to be honest, just right up front. It's going to be very hard for me to be impartial on this movie because it was such a huge presence in my life when I was a kid. Yeah. So this is the first one. This is the first one we've done that has been like total nostalgia to me. So it should be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen this one before, but I grew up with the games, so that'll bring a new lens to it too, because we'll talk about it as an adaptation, but I really think it's interesting because the new movie's coming out, and that looks so specifically like we're recreating the video game for your eyes, or at least the new video games. Obviously not the original video game. How do you make that into a movie? But, it's going to be an interesting lens looking at it as someone who grew up with it versus someone who grew up with the property but didn't grow up with this movie versus two people who are probably seemingly very excited for the movie. I'm assuming you're excited. I'm excited.
I am. Excited. Me and my kids are both very excited. Are all very excited for this movie.
So we're doing Super Mario Brothers. Is it called the Super Mario Brothers movie, or is that the new one coming out?
It's called Super Mario Bros. Period. So I think that we can say Super Mario Brothers.
Okay, Super Mario Brothers. The new one.
Yeah, no movie, just Super Mario Bros.
It's going to get so confusing when they make like 12 of these things. Anyway, the only one that exists in live action right now, that's the one we're talking about, in inspiration for and in anticipation for this new one that's coming out literally tonight if you're going to the midnight screening, or tomorrow if you're releasing it on a Wednesday. Also fucked with our schedule because it's like usually we can try to like get an episode done by the first week of the year. Like we did it for Batman. We got it in before Batman came out. Batman came out on a Friday. They decided April Fools, we're gonna release it on a Wednesday, so now we're extra cramming it in. But I think that also is fun because we're still in the mindset of we just got off Dungeons and Dragons, which is a kind of cool companion piece considering that's based on a game as well. So it's like we're still in this game stratosphere, pulling from the things we love and these adaptations. Oh my god, I like choked on air. Adaptations of things we love, so it'll be definitely very exciting to see.
To be fair on timing, whoever chooses the movies we watch didn't realize that the movie we were doing for tie-in in March came out on the 31st of March, and the movie we were doing for April came out the 5th of April. That was on me.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, you didn't decide when these movies came out either. I mean, it's their own fault, Illumination and Universal, for being like, let's stick the Framewreck guys with an early recording date. I like to believe they did it to spite us, so do not take any of the blame, Matt. I fully blame the minions for overriding Illumination's release schedule. Even though I have come around, I mean, that is like my big soft, like post-pandemic resolution that I'm building towards, is being a little less harsh on the minions. And I liked the last Minions movie. So, the Grinch's heart is growing 3 sizes. So I'm actually really excited for this new Illumination one because I really think they're on kind of an upward trajectory. Because Sing 2, I was absolutely still am obsessed with. And the new Minions movie I actually really liked. So I'm hoping they go 3 for 3 here. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the OG, the one that you've seen how many times by now, you think?
Oh, who knows? Who knows?
Mhm.
It was on. I won't say constant rotation in my house, but I will say that I knew the movie very well in my
Mhm.
youth, and it came as a shock to me one day when I was talking to my cousin about great movies, and he was like, "What? Super Mario Brothers? You know that's a bad movie, right?" And I was like, "Excuse me? Like,
Well, Matt,
no."
it's interesting because the show we do is so bad they're good movies, or sometimes movies that we haven't seen that we think are so bad they're good that just turn out to be just plain flat out bad. It's very rare where the two of us go into it and just like leave thinking that was a genuinely good movie. It's happened a few times, like Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Like we were both like, no, that is a genuinely good
Mhm.
movie. I feel like it's happened one other time, maybe. I mean, some of the Twilight
Twilight.
movies,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna go on record right now, and I'm gonna say this is a good movie. And it is an unironically good movie, and I'm a fan of it, and I think it's good, and we will talk about it. But I listen. I said, you know what? It's not. I'm not going to tell you it's a great movie, and I'm not even going to tell you
No.
it's not. It doesn't have disastrous elements, or it's not silly. It's not camp, or it's certainly not faithful. But for those who like say this is one of the worst movies ever made, y'all need to watch more movies. That's just my opinion. Maybe I am one of very few people who think that. I don't even know if you still think that, but it seems like you're more on the so bad it's good train. But it seems like you still like this movie, so we're gonna have a fun time talking about it regardless.
Um, Dill, the joy on my face is completely genuine to hear you say that. Because as I'm watching this movie, I'm like, it's just a good movie. Like there are bad things, there are campy things. We're going to talk about some of the things. But as I'm watching it, I'm just like, yeah, I understand why people say this is a bad movie, and I understand how it's not a faithful adaptation. And although I'm going to tell you about the history of this, and there's some wildness in it.
Yeah,
But
because I have some
um,
questions about that specifically to you, which I'll let you continue in just a sec. But like my question comes from at that point when it was released, what Mario stuff had been produced? Because I would love to know because like I'm coming at this of like I've seen all the Mario Karts, all the Mario parties, all the Super Mario, Paper Mario, all of it. I'm looking at with the context, but I'm like, how much was there really to go off of in the 90s? Because I feel like the actual original game, you can't just adapt that faithfully. I don't know how anyone expects to adapt something like that faithfully because it's not a game about its story. That's like
right,
making Tetris or Sudoku into a movie, a faithful adaptation. No, and I say that because there's a movie that's called Tetris right now that's on Apple TV Plus, but it's like, you know, you
right.
can't make games like this are made to be games. Like they're not meant to have real stories necessarily. There are characters, but I would love to know just like where you were at in the early 90s, right? Early 90s, late 80s. When did this come out? Early 90s. Yeah. So
This movie out in 1993. Yeah.
yeah, like what had been released? So like what were people complaining about in terms of the adaptation? Because I feel like how do you adapt something that's so bare to make it like faithful? Like that's the part I don't understand. Like if you're making a Mario movie today based on everything that's come out since, like sure you have games with full stories and fully fleshed characters and great animation, but it's like back then like they didn't have much to go off of, so I don't mind it. Anyway, we'll get into it, but I just think it's very interesting to see what people criticize this movie for, aside from the writing, direction, all that, but more so just it's their sacred Mario that cannot be tainted, all that stuff.
First, let me continue with the. I was watching this movie and thinking, I like everything I remember loving about it when I was a kid. I still love about it now, and some of it's like, oh, that's a lot cheesier than I remember it being, or whatever.
Sure.
But at no point was I. No point was this a slog. At no point was I feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I love this movie. I'm still on the, I think this is a good, like, I like this movie. It's a good movie, and not in the way I like The Room or these other, most of the movies we
Oh
talk
yeah.
about. Like, I like it for its value. And yeah, so I'm glad to hear that. That's gonna be an interesting conversation that you at least feel similarly. As far as your question, as far as what had come out by this point, as Mario was, it, by this point, most of the early Mario, like up to after this movie came out in 1995, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island came out in 1995, and then in 1996 was Super Mario 64, which is the point where it started to like change to the kind of
3D,
change into what we have today with the alternate characters having a much more prominence, or the surrounding characters and personalities outside of Mario and Luigi. So that basically all of the early, the classic Mario stuff was already out by this point. So in 1993, or I don't know what year that they started the process of doing this, but whenever they started doing this, a guy named Roland Joffe, I think, I don't know how to pronounce his name, got the rights from Nintendo and was given full creative license to do whatever he wanted. They offered Nintendo creative control, and they said, no, Mario is good enough, that is strong enough that we can experiment with it.
Great.
This is the first video game movie ever. Like,
really?
as far as produced by a major studio, there may have been short films or whatever, things that aren't that maybe aren't on our radar,
or like original video games like Tron that weren't based on anything else. Yeah,
right. This is the first video game movie based on a video game property ever. Was this, and so there wasn't a playbook, and Nintendo said, you know what, do whatever you want. Let's get wild. And some people tried to do that. Originally, they had given it to, gosh, I'm blanking on his name and I don't have it written down. The guy who wrote Rain Man, and he wrote a movie that I would really love to see. I really wish that it had been made, because they rejected it because it was too close.
Barry Morrow and Ronald Bass.
Yes. Yeah, Barry Morrow is who it was that they gave it to. So they allowed him to write the screenplay, and he wrote a screenplay which was basically Mario and Luigi traveling through the Mushroom Kingdom, very similar to Rain Man, and it was about their relationship, similar to Rain Man, and they rejected it because it was too close to Rain Man. I still would love to see that movie. Like, that's one of those alternate things. Like, if I ever get to go to an alternate universe, I'm going to look up and see what version of the Super Mario Bros. Was made. Because if it's the one where Barry Morrow got to write the script, I really want to see that movie. But Roland Joffe, I don't know how you say it. Whenever he was trying to get people to write it, or when he was talking, when it was in the pre-production stage, they wanted it to be subversive comedy influenced by Ghostbusters, The Wizard of Oz, and The Wizard of Oz. And they wanted to have elements drawn from fairy tales and contemporary American culture, which is basically what they got. However, they had several versions of the script. They had the approved version of the script, and then as production started, we saw this with Dungeons and Dragons last time, was that as they started filming, or as they got into like the final stages, the studio came in and said, no, we need to change it to this, and we need to change it a lot. And apparently the directors, which was a husband and wife team, the directors, Rocky Morton and Annabelle Jankel, co-directed by a woman, big miss on the draft last month.
Sorry, if I had seen it sooner, who knows?
But apparently they were, I believe Bob Hoskins described them as or described their talent as arrogance arrogance masquerading as talent or something like that. Apparently they were not fun to work with. Everybody who worked on it was like, oh, they sucked. But there are many elements, or there are many filmmaking techniques that were introduced and innovated in this movie that we still use today. I don't have a list of them or anything, but one of them is the Autodesk Flame, which is a CGI, like a visual effects software that was beta tested on this movie, that has basically grown into what we use today for visual effects.
Yeah, you can definitely see like the early like comings of those visual effects, like especially at the end when like everything becomes kind of like pixelated and they start to fade away and stuff like that. I actually think those hold up pretty well, like especially given the time. And I think a lot of the reason why films of this era specifically work with this style specifically is because a lot of it is still practical, and like the few special effects they have are still practical effects. It's like animatronics, and it's, you know, it's the stuff you see in Jurassic Park, which it was released, I believe, the same week or same month as Jurassic Park, which, you know, it's hard to compete, but like similar stuff. I mean, Yoshi is an animatronic dinosaur, and, you know, a lot of the, you know, monsters, it's makeup effects or animatronic effects or like goo, or, you know, things that you still can have tangibly on set. Some of them are maybe filled in with some visual effects, but a lot of the CGI is very barren and used very just, you know, sparsely, and used in kind of like a background way where it's like one effect. It is a special effect because it feels special. It's used very sparingly, and it's not just like using the visual effects for the entire, you know, setting like we see in Marvel movies today, you know. So I definitely applaud that. You know, it's something similar you see in like the Schumacher Batman movies. It's something you see in even the Burton Batman movies, you know, like a real sense of practicality while all still feeling like special effects because they still feel out of the ordinary to our normal life, which I think is really fun. Like it's a cool angle to take the story. Yeah, but you can definitely see those early, you know, kind of showings of those visual effects, and that's fun to see.
Yeah, the visual effects in this are great. The production design as a whole is really great, because once they get down to Dino Hatton, it really feels like a different but similar world. Like you can feel that, oh yeah, this feels like New York, you know, in the 90s, Times Square before it became Times Square, you know, like,
well, because it's also acting as like a social satire and like a comment on political power, political corruptness, anti-cop. Like it's got a lot of those things that it's trying to say. And I think you need to kind of create a background that is both distant and familiar all at once. It's like what we see in the Verhoeven stuff, like RoboCop, Starship Troopers. You need a sense of place that is foreign but also very close to home to kind of get that effect across, as well as Batman and Robin. Like I actually felt so similarly to like that kind of steampunk cyberpunk like Batman and Robin vibe from this. It just, I think this even has a lot more to say in terms of its actual commentary than even that film does, but that the setting and the production design definitely aids in that, and that was definitely one of the strengths for me for sure as well.
Oh yeah, it's really great. And there's actually I was reading about this. There's a deleted scene. There's actually apparently an hour's worth of deleted content from this movie in order to get it to make time. And some of it sounded like stuff that really would have, I think, improved the movie. Like there's a scene early in the movie, or at the beginning of the movie, when Koopa is chasing Daisy's mom through New York. First of all, they show him actually chasing her through New York, but also that like as he's there, he's like admiring New York, and then that's what he takes back to his universe and emulates with Dino Hatton. Like that's why Dino Hatton looks like that, is because when he was here 20 years earlier, he was like, oh wow, this is what I like. This is what I'm going to use to try to take power is an innovation to our city. So yeah, that I think that's pretty cool. I don't know. I guess maybe it's the same in their universe, but the fact that Daisy's mom took her to a church just and was able to identify a church to leave her at is the first note I have, just because I was like, this feel like, I know, yeah, it's a movie and maybe it's the same there, but it feels like that wouldn't necessarily, this random building, this random door wouldn't be the first place I would stop if I were from a different dimension. But yeah, but it worked out, so it's fine. Okay, well, I've gone through the backstory. It was written by a lot of people. There's just a lot of credits on this writing, and directed by Rocky Moore and Annabelle Jankel. So let's get into what makes this movie great, which we've already started talking about.
Yeah, it kind of leads itself, because I think we have to kind of start with the adaptation itself, and like and a lot of the criticisms is it's not a faithful adaptation. Some say it's not a good adaptation. I think those are two separate things, because a good adaptation doesn't have to be faithful. Is West Side Story is a good adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. Is it a faithful adaptation? No. It takes place decades later. It has totally different named characters. It has different ethnicities. Does that make it a bad movie? A bad adaptation even? No. Like, I think there's a difference between good and bad adaptation and faithful or non-faithful adaptation. Is this a faithful adaptation? Not at all. Not even really in the slightest. They get very few things correct. They get the names of some characters, they get some of the outfits, and they get the overall, like, I think the first like 10 seconds has some of the score from the game, like in the titles credits. Like, I really don't think there's a lot of, like, there's a little iconography with the bomb and the Koopa coins, and like they try a little bit. But like I asked you earlier, like I wanted to know how much had been released by then, because there's really not a lot you can go off of. I mean, the game is not meant to be this long, sweeping story. And even the modern stuff like Mario Kart and Mario Party don't really have stories to them. It's just kind of like, this is your task, do it. And that's the whole thing about this, is it's a video game. And that's why it probably was hard to adapt video games at that time, because they didn't have these full stories. You know, it was just kind of like you'd play levels. They were levels, you know, and each level was still the same thing, just in a different setting, I guess. Like, there was no real story to where, like, I don't know what people expected or what they wanted. I get, looking at it now, looking at all the Mario we've gotten, maybe they wanted something a little bit more story driven, maybe a few more worlds, a few more characters, a few more designs to be accurate. But back then, like, I don't know why faithful is such a big thing when making this movie. And I think it's actually a really interesting adaptation, because it takes the framework and just kind of builds upon it in an interesting way to say something completely unique and to a movie. Like, it has stuff to say that a movie has to say, not a game that, you know, you can play for fun in little 20-minute segments, you know, which is what I really, really liked. I liked the idea of like using a property to tell a bigger story with some iconography, but mostly tell your own separate story. You know, there's plumbers from New York, they go into this other universe, boom, that's it. That's like all we have to borrow. Now let's tell our own story. And I really like that. Do I want to see the characters I know and love as they are? Yeah, I do. But it's like, I still think it's very interesting. Like, I'm a theater person. I look at revivals and like, do I want the same production of Pippin every time they revive it? It's my favorite musical. No, I don't. I want to see different interpretations. I like the one they set in the Big Top Circus. I like the ones they set other places. Like, I want to see what Into the Woods in Space looks like. It's not a faithful adaptation, but it's a new direction to take that story. And I feel like this is what that reminds me of. It's like, take something we love and put a spin on it. You know, we've seen it with The Wizard of Oz. We've seen it with Peter Pan, things like that. Like, why can't this also work for that idea? You know what I mean?
Right. No, I completely agree, because not only is it this is exactly the movie that you're going to get if you're going to set Mario in the early 90s. Like, it feels early 90s, and everything about it, like, it feels, I agree. What you're saying about faithful adaptation versus good adaptation. It's not faithful, but a faithful adaptation would be bad, I think. Like, it would be mostly Mario going to the wrong castles for a long, long time until he finally goes to the right castle and flips a switch and Bowser falls. Like, that's a faithful adaptation.
Yeah, and if you want a faithful adaptation, there's one coming out tomorrow. You know what I mean? And honestly,
which even that is not going to be like
Right.
that's not going to be based on the storyline of the games. It's going
No,
to
it's just
be
gonna
it.
borrow the visual aesthetic and the
Yes,
actual
exactly.
characters. But even then, I'm a little more apprehensive because I hope they do something more original and not
Right.
just what you see in the video game is what you get. I like when a movie offers more than a video game. Otherwise, I would just play the video game. I haven't finished Last of Us yet because I'm still too emotionally distraught over episode 3. But I'd like to believe they take some liberties, because if not, then you're just looking at Hollywood actors reenacting a game that you can do the same exact thing for. So
Right.
and I haven't played the game, so I actually can't draw from that. Zach Love and other people have told me it's close, but they do diverge. So
Right.
I'm
Well,
just
episode
I
3
like.
is a diversion in that show.
There you go.
That completely doesn't happen.
I don't
So
know, but yeah, I trust your
yeah.
word. Like I do really enjoy when an adaptation takes liberties, especially when
Yeah.
it's so bare bones already. What are you gonna do? A 10-minute movie? Like, you can make a short film,
Right.
fine, but you know,
No, yeah, I completely agree. For me, a lot of the for me the references themselves worked just fine. And in fact, the things that they did choose to use from the games, I absolutely love. Bob-ombs are my favorite thing from Mario in the world. I think they're
nice.
adorable. I want one. Anytime that they release like a line of toys from Mario, I'll usually go buy the Bob-omb.
Toy
I love
Bob-omb.
Bob-omb.
Gotcha. Yeah, you
Um,
said you wanted one. I just wanted to make sure, since we're showing this to the world, that you do not want to own a bomb. You want to own a Bob-omb.
no,
There's a
I want a Bob-omb. Yes,
difference.
Bob-omb. I love Bob-ombs. The character slash weapon. Um, and I think a lot of it actually has to do with this movie because it's so cute and it walks
That
and
is.
it knows where it's going. It knows what it's doing. So that's faithful, that thing, except for it's usually used against the Mario Brothers rather than for them. But that is faithful itself. But then they like add these little things, and I've said it before. I've said it 1,000 times. I am a sucker for fan service. I love fan service. You know why? Because I'm a fan. And I want to be serviced. Don't take that wrong. Um, I'm actually a huge fan of fan service. Yeah, sometimes it get in the way, and yes, sometimes it can ruin a moment from a film or whatever. But for the most part, for me, honestly, if it fits the tone of the movie, I love a fan service. I will you'll never hear me complain about a fan service moment. So this movie has a lot of fan service in it that doesn't actually serve the thing because the references, like there's store signs that say Thwomp, and that's from the games. There's
Right.
the little cartridges that they put in the shoes that make them jump are little bullet bills. Not only
Mm,
that, but there's a sign that says bullet bills in the thing as well. So there's a lot of little references throughout. Big Bertha. Big Bertha is a character from the things, from the games. Things like that. Toad, who is a much bigger character in the in the landscape of the thing, he is in it, but only just. But honestly, Toad was going to be a character you're never going to be able to pull off in this movie. A little mushroom
yeah.
guy, like
Toad is the one time I was like, "Ooh, what a choice." And the harmonica also didn't make much sense to me. I don't know if they maybe explained it and went over my head, but
well, I mean, because he was the musician on the street, and then so they
so
gave
it was
that
just
back
to
to him
give
as his.
him okay,
It was
like
just
give him some
it was just to
comfort.
give him and to let us basically honestly just let the audience know which one he was. I mean, you could tell
Okay,
he had the
okay.
little rings on his head, but
Gotcha.
it was
I was
also
hoping
like
they would at
just
least have him, like, maybe every time he exhaled, it played a little bit of the theme, like a dun 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 or something, like maybe, I don't know, that could have been fun. But Toad is
well,
the
and
one
then
time I was like, okay, interesting. Like that was such a 180. But again, I don't know if the design of Toad as we know it was made at that point or not. Like, Toad's a
right,
dinosaur essentially in this movie.
right. Well, yeah, Toad is the one in the original games who was like, "Oh no, the princess is in the wrong cat. This is not the right castle."
Gotcha.
But the as far as the harmonica, I mean, it does come up later because he does end up playing the song that makes all of
Right.
the Goombas dance. Speaking of the Goombas, I think those things are adorable. I think
Oh, really?
that I think they're absolutely adorable. When they're when they're all dance when they make them dance together. No one in their right mind would think that was that was a serious thing that the writers were coming up with, thinking everybody's going to love this genius thing. Everybody knew it was going to be a funny moment. It was meant for laughs. It was meant to be a campy, cheesy moment. And I absolutely love that moment when they make them all dance together. And then later when he makes them all sway because he's playing the thing. Anyway, I thought the Goombas were absolutely adorable. Yeah, it would have been cool to have like a real character Toad who felt like the character from the games. But honestly, I'm okay with what we got because I just thought they were adorable. Those Goombas.
What were your thoughts on the omission of two big characters that we got to talk about, Bowser and Peach? Because, like, in my opinion, like when I think of the game, I think of Mario has to rescue Peach from Bowser. Like that's the very crux of the original game and kind of what every game kind of follows. Did you mind the choice to not have them in it? Or do you think like that's just not what this movie was? Do you wish they had kind of found a way to make them a part of it? What are your thoughts on that? Because I've been reading some other reviews just to see what people felt, and they're like, Peach isn't even in it. Why you have Daisy in it but no Peach? And where's Bowser? You know, you're gonna have King Koopa. Why not just call him Bowser or have it be Bowser? All this stuff.
This is kind of Koopa and Bowser. They had the character, like they had that character, like that was what they were going for. Was Koopa and Bowser are the same. They're just renamed. They're renamed. Prince Peach and Daisy, though, if I'm not mistaken, they were not named. Daisy was named that at that point. I don't know if Peach was named Peach yet. She may have been
just the princess.
She was Princess Toadstool back in the first few games. That was her name, Princess Toadstool. She was the princess of the Mushroom Kingdom. Like,
gotcha.
And so she was Princess Toadstool back then. That's what I knew her about for a long time. I was a grumpy old man about this way earlier than I should have been, and I'm definitely not that anymore. But back in the day, anytime somebody called her Peach, I'm like, her name's not Peach, it's Toadstool.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting. See, this is the stuff I love to hear because it's like I wish I could have lived through that change, and that shift. Because when I was young, it was like this was Mario, and it is how we.
It's see it today, similar to how they changed the name of Dr. Robotnik to Dr. Eggman. And that upsets me. And it only upsets me in the gatekeepy sense that, like, that's not who he was when I played, and I don't play these games anymore. So, like, the person, what you're calling him now is new and scary, and I don't like it. That's basically the thing. Okay. I don't like calling him Dr. Eggman. He's Dr. Robotnik. It's the same with Peach. Like, I don't mind calling her Peach now because it's been so long. She's been Peach much longer than she was Princess Toadstool. So Daisy is not the Daisy from the games. This is the princess character that is meant to represent the princess from the games. It's not the same character as Daisy. If you look them up on Wikipedia or like the official Mario stuff, it'll tell you if you're talking about the Daisy from the Super Mario Brothers movie, click here. You go there, it'll say, oh, yeah, it just happens to be also named Daisy. Like, that's all it is. It's not an adaptation of Daisy.
I wonder when Daisy, the character, came out. Because in this one, like, Daisy ends up with Luigi, not Mario. And I think that's an interesting choice because in the games, it's more so Peach is Mario's and Daisy's Luigi's. Is that still circumstantial, coincidental? Or
I think that's it. Okay.
I'm going to look up now when
now that I'm thinking about it here, I remember I did look this up because I wanted to know if they were doing that. The idea is that she is based on Daisy, but she's not considered the same character. Gotcha. It's not considered an adaptation. She's based on it with the Luigi connection and the name. Yeah.
And I just looked. They introduced Daisy in 1989. Yes. So she had already existed in the games already. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I did. I also looked that up. But yeah, she was. The character itself is not the same. And the backstory and all that's not the same. She's inspired by it, but she's not specifically supposed to be Daisy from the games. It's just the princess in this movie type of situation. Which actually this time I was watching it because the idea that was not Princess Toadstool when I was a kid didn't ever cross my mind. I was like, okay, that's Princess Toadstool. They just happen to be having her hook up with the person who was more age appropriate. Like that's how I thought of it back then. Watching it this time, I was like, okay, that's Daisy. I wonder if Peach is one of these other like if we find out that Peach is there, find out this other, and then Mario actually has a date when they go on the double date, and I was like, maybe she's supposed to be Peach, and then she doesn't, and that never turns out they weren't ever doing anything like that. But I was wondering, thinking about it, I was like, maybe they're insinuating something that I didn't catch when I was a kid, and then they just never insinuated that. I will say this about, and this is a tangent here, but I will say this about Mario's date on that thing. She was set up to be the stereotypical Italian girlfriend from every 90s movie, just loud and annoying and with
Marissa
him like
Tomei
wishing
and
he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, like him wishing he didn't have a girlfriend, but for some reason being with her. I was surprised that fairly quickly they make her like a interesting, sympathetic, like separate character person. Because once she's like kidnapped and then she's like talking with Daisy and the thing, like she's definitely not that character. But they set her up as though she might be that kind of character. So I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't go with that stereotypical 90s Italian girlfriend trope. So that was cool. So with the adaptation, there's some things that are fun. There's some fan service stuff. Overall, if you're doing live action, and especially if you're setting in the real world, this is about as good as you're going to get with this property. I mean, if you're going to set it in the fantasy world of the Mushroom Kingdom, where there's no portals or anything like that, and somehow there's two plumbers in modern plumbing clothing who happen to live there, I think that's a hurdle that the live action movies, if they wanted to do that, I think that's inherently silly. And it's something that if you're going to make a live action adaptation and try to be faithful, you're going to have to clear some pretty high hurdles of silliness.
Yeah.
It works in animated and it works in video games because we don't question that. Those are meant to be silly and those are meant to be, we're not meant to question the logic of those things. If you're doing a live action and you're trying to actually make an actual serious live action movie with this, there's some hurdles you got to jump. I think they jumped those hurdles in this movie as well as they could.
Yeah, and I really like it. Like it's a cool interpretation of this story. Like I like what it has to say about corruption and stuff that feels ahead of its time. And now looking back, I'm like, it fits in line with a lot of the social satires that at the time were being heralded. Because like I think of RoboCop, like people loved RoboCop because it was like a cool action movie, and then later realized how much there was below the surface. Whereas here it was like, the outside was a little less convincing to people that they immediately just started trashing on it. But I believe that like the more you go into this movie, there's a lot more to say that's a lot more interesting than its surface level kind of indicates. On the surface, it is very silly, it is campy, it is fun, and I get why people don't like it because it is an acquired taste. But below the surface, there's some real interesting, thoughtful stuff being said that I think is really exciting, especially considering it's a Mario movie. You know what I mean?
This was 20 some years before a certain president made his way into office, but Did you notice how much like a certain ex-president of ours, Dennis Hopper, looked and acted and sounded?
You almost called him Donald Hopper. Yep. I know. And that's the thing is like, it's also Dennis Hopper, so he's really leaning into it here, and it's one of those case scenarios where like at times you're like, does he know what movie he's in? But I think he does. Like I think he really does, and I like his interpretation of the character, and it really, it's one of those things where when he first greets them, he's trying to get the stone or whatever, and he's like talking to them. He's like, "Oh, that King Koopa, he's a vile, evil, disgusting monster. Now tell me, where's this stone or whatever?" Then they realize it's him, and he's like, "Yeah, I know. I told you, I'm a vile, disgusting like he kind of doubles down on it. It's not like he was trying to like fake them out earlier. He was just saying it how it is, and I really like that. Like I like the interpretation of this character and his presence in the movie for sure. And yes, I did get all those similarities for sure.
I part of me wonders, and I didn't see any evidence of this because I don't think he ever spoke about this before he passed away, which I think he passed away before before Trump.
Yeah, he passed away in I think 2010. I think.
Yeah, like it was before all that. So I didn't ever see anything where he had commented on it, but Trump was an entity in New York at the time. Like he definitely would have been.
Well, yeah.
He definitely would have been someone that they could have that he could have been modeling his performance after. And
Oh
if
yeah,
that
I'm
was
sure.
if that's the case,
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
sure Biff from
chef's
Back to the
kiss.
Future 2, I think, is
Oh,
directly modeled after it, if not him specifically, but like definitely like New York billionaire, rich
yeah,
people. Like he. The thing is, a lot of these films are just like, modeling themselves after these rich billionaire, wealthy, I own the world type people, which was him until he became president. Now it's like that added thing, but like he was always being parodied for what he was before he was president, even
right.
as he
Yeah,
was as a normal person, which I don't want to say, but
yeah.
like he was still, something I think we see a lot of parallels in media of, because he was like that one you could poke on, kind of like what Elon Musk is now for cinema.
Mhm.
Like you can kind of like draw a lot of parallels, which I hope that doesn't foreshadow anything about him in his career,
Oh yeah.
but
Oh yeah.
like I feel like a lot of the times people in media that we see in these like satires nowadays, you can draw parallels to like Elon Musk like characters, or like
Yeah.
Zuckerberg esque characters, the people that at that time that was the Trump figure. So I totally see that. Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of
Let's
that New York tie-in as well.
let's talk about some of the other performances in this movie since we
Yeah, for
talked
sure.
about Hopper's
Yeah.
performance. Okay, I'm a huge Bob Hoskins fan, just
Oh,
in
me too.
general.
Me too.
I
I'm
love Bob
admittedly
Hoskins.
haven't seen enough of his stuff, so I would like to hear more of you,
Right.
because I've only
Well, I
seen
mean,
this and Roger Rabbit.
okay. Have you ever seen Hook?
I did when I was little, but I haven't revisited it in a long time. So
Okay.
I'm gonna, for a big Spielberg thing I'm doing this summer. But yeah,
When you watch it, notice how Hoskins, who plays Smee, is the best version of Smee that's ever existed, including the cartoon. He is the ultimate Smee. If nothing else, that movie gave us Bob Hoskins as Smee, which is the best. I'm in love with it. It's one of my favorite performances of all time. Him as Smee. He's also in Jimmy Valentine, is that his name in Roger Rabbit? Who
yeah,
Framed Roger
great
Rabbit?
in that.
Yeah, he's great in that. He's in a lot of things, and I've seen him in a lot of things, and I just love him. But back then, to me, he was Jimmy Valentine and Smee from Hook, and so this comes out, and once again, he's playing a character that I like, and I don't know. There's something iconic and nostalgic about Bob Hoskins for me. Like I've seen his other work as I've grown up and seen some of the other more adult stuff that he's done, and it's great, and he's a fantastic actor. But there's a part of him that will always live in my heart because of those three movies specifically that as a child were just so ingrained in me. Mario, him as Mario is one of those. I think about him as Mario, I promise you, probably once a month. Usually
Nice.
because I still have some references in there that I use occasionally
Mhm.
that bring it around there. But I do think about him as Mario a lot. Anytime I see when my sons are playing Mario, I'll say it's Mario, and that will always make me think of that scene in the movie.
Mhm.
And so I think about him as so.
Which
Anyway,
is a great scene. I love that,
it's
because it's like the whole joke is they're the Mario brothers, and they take it quite literally to where like they are, let's say, the Randazzo brothers or the Chapman brothers. Like they're literally like
yeah,
using the last name, and that's the whole joke. Is it's like it's Mario and Luigi, but they are the Mario brothers, so that would make him Mario. Which I don't know if it was established in the game. I don't know if this is the one that kind of coined that idea. That was their
he
last name.
he has a name in officially. I don't think it's ever like said in the game. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure he has a name, and I think it's Japanese. Like it's like
Oh, gotcha.
it's either his name is Mario something Japanese, or his name is something Japanese Mario, or I might be making that up and it's something else. I'm not sure.
Either way, it's such a great fun gag
Yeah.
choice, because it's like you're playing with the fact that it's Super Mario Brothers, and like
Right.
the Mario's the last name. Like I think that's just such a funny joke, and we kind of take it for granted now. But I agree, Bob Hoskins is so good, and I like how he's not trying to do. I know we did it for our cold open, but not do the offensive Italian stereotype, because even then, I don't know if Mario even like had much of a voice in the games, or talked that much. But like, you can't do 2 hours of this voice, the whole time. Like there's very few actors who can pull that off. Borat being one of the very few where like you can listen to a voice like that for 2 hours, and not even those movies are 90 minutes. So like, I think that kind of also goes into what people are criticizing the new movie for off of one trailer, which is Chris Pratt isn't doing the voice. And I'm like, you really want to listen to that for an entire hour and a half? Be my guest, but I'd rather hear someone just give a good performance and do something new.
Right.
And I like how he takes to heart the fact he's from Brooklyn, and that's who his character is. He's very New York. Everything's like this, and it works really well. I think it's a good accent, and it feels right for this version of the character and the character in itself.
I agree. As far as the whole Pratt thing, I never understood why anybody wants that voice, wants a movie with that voice. Not only is it just like vaguely and insulting to Italian people, but it's also like annoying.
I think it's more anti Pratt than it is anti Pratt's distinctive vocal choice. I think it's more like they don't like him, which granted I don't love him either, but like, you know, enough said.
I have an answer to Mario, the Mario thing.
Oh, cool.
To his name. Apparently I was very wrong. I knew there was something not long ago, like a few years ago, that was talked about. It was that Satoru Iwata had said that because the guy who played Mario, Charles Martinet, had declared that his name was Mario.
Oh,
and then the Nintendo CEO at the time had said, no, he has no last name. His name is just Mario. And then Miyamoto, the
creator.
What was his title? Oh gosh, I've forgotten it. I don't know. Anyway, the creator, I think, is that of Mario agreed with that, and so that's fine. But then 2 months after Iwata's death in 2015, Miyamoto changed his stance, asserting that Super Mario Brothers 30th Anniversary Festival, asserting at the Super Mario Brothers 30th Anniversary Festival that Mario's full name was indeed Mario. So it is officially Mario.
There you go. Yeah,
it wasn't. It wasn't. This movie spawned that. I mean, it came from this movie because it didn't exist before that.
There you go. So, masterpiece.
Yeah.
I think we have to talk about the other half too, which is Luigi Mario, which is John Leguizamo, who I am very hit or miss with him. I grew up with him as like the voice of Sid the Sloth. Sid the Sloth is so good. And then in Ice Age, and then I seen him recently in like movies like The Menu and stuff. And then I also saw him in like Moulin Rouge, and I don't like him in Moulin Rouge. I think he's annoying in that. Yeah, I think he steals way too much focus. I find his performance grating. But again, like I feel like he has so many shades of performance in him that this was, I think, a really solid performance from him. Like, I really think he did a good job, especially considering the brother dynamic. Like, they very clearly worked out these characters and fleshed out these characters to where there's a clear power dynamic. Mario's the boss. Luigi's kind of just the sidekick. He's still kind of coming into his own. They give him that little love story, but also kind of give him a little immaturity, but also give him moments to be brave. And I feel like they're going to play a lot into that in the second movie. In the new movie coming out, I don't want to say second because it's not a continuation per se, but like you see from the trailers, like Mario's clearly the one on the mission, but you see a lot of stuff in the trailer of Luigi being a little bit more like nervous and like kind of, having his own side quests and kind of coming into his own. Like, I like that idea that Luigi's kind of like tagging along, and it's less about like the two of them even, like I like the sidekick dynamic, and I think he plays in this well, John Leguizamo. I think he's got a real endearing earnestness to him in this role.
I agree. I've always loved Luigi. Luigi is always my preferred character when I play Mario. Back when I played Mario, if we're playing 2-player, it's fine. You can be player 1. I want to be Luigi. So nice. I was part of it is my favorite color is green, but also just like I don't know. There was something about him. I enjoyed Luigi. I also have an aversion to the main characters in a lot of things. So I have the opportunity, like I'm a Raphael guy, I'm a Wolverine guy, I'm not a Cyclops or Leonardo guy. Like that's the situation. Leguizamo. You grew up with him as Sid the Sloth. I grew up with him just like this. Obviously I was a kid back when this came out. For me, this is the first thing I ever saw him, and I love that he had a quote because he was like, for so long they hired Italians to play Latinos, and So we get one. Latino's going to play an Italian, which I love that. And I saw him in this, saw him in a few other like comedy stuff. I was enjoying that, but then there was a point not long after this. I don't know when. Time is weird because back then so much of my memories seem to have happened in what feels like a long amount of time, but it's actually a short amount of time compared to the rest of my life. So it's hard for me to remember exactly how long. But
Right.
at some point, probably not long after this, he made a movie called The Pest, which was awful. And and at that point I was like, okay, so maybe I'm done with him in comedy. It's actually not. It was a very short amount of time after this because then I saw him in Romeo and Juliet, which is, I love that adaptation. He is the definitive Tybalt to me. He will always be Tybalt to me. I just absolutely love his performance. It's my favorite performance of his. It's one of my favorite performances of all time. Him as Tybalt. It's up there with
Bob Hoskins and Hook.
Bob Hoskins as me. Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. Like, it's that situation. Like, for me, when I think about that movie, it's John Leguizamo as Tybalt. I absolutely love it. He was Tybalt. I do love him in Moulin as Toulouse-Lautrec. I think that he, to me, his character tips the tone into what Baz Luhrmann is going for, because in that movie there's this frenetic thing and this love thing and a little bit of comedy, and Toulouse-Lautrec's character is kind of the pivot point where it pivots into, this is what Baz Luhrmann is going for. Like, it feels like the final ingredient, the final piece of the puzzle that says, okay, I understand this movie, because a different movie would not have put that Toulouse-Lautrec in it. And Toulouse-Lautrec would not be in a different movie. Like, for me, he's just a puzzle piece in that movie that makes it feel like what that movie is. I'm obviously a Baz Luhrmann fan, so because I just mentioned two of his movies that I really love, and I love John Leguizamo. So, and then obviously he's grown to be John Leguizamo of today, where he is still working, where he's obviously in The Menu most recently. So yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I do like him in this movie a lot. As I said, it's basically where I know him from.
Yeah.
Like it was the start.
I actually got to see John Leguizamo speak at a graduation for my college the year before I graduated. So like the class above me, I went to support some friends, obviously, because like I grew really close to some friends, and John Leguizamo was the speaker, which is really cool. So yeah, I'm a fan of his. I'm a big fan of his.
Nice. Let's talk about how Fiona Shaw is in this movie.
Dursley, man. Like, again, another person I don't think I've seen in anything else since Harry Potter. Or maybe I have, and I'm just not remembering.
Here's the thing about Fiona Shaw. As I have gotten older,
she's in the Tree of Life. Okay.
She's in Tree of Life.
I've seen her one other thing.
She's in Cassian Andor. I don't know if you've watched that yet. Or Andor.
I have not.
She's in that. But as I get older and rewatch some of the stuff I used to watch back in the day, or catch up on things that I just did not see back then, I realize how many times I saw Fiona Shaw in my life before she was Petunia Dursley, where I'm like, gosh, that is her. And this is one of them where I saw her and I was like, that's it. That's where I know. Like, it's very interesting because she's in a lot of stuff that I just didn't realize. I didn't have a reason to remember that it was her until now. She's so iconic in Harry Potter that it's just like, oh, I knew her before that and I didn't realize it. Like, it's very interesting. But I love her character in this. You remember what I said about Toulouse-Lautrec being the missing puzzle piece that tips it into a certain type of movie? That's her character, because it could be, she's very much a straightforward kind of boss bitch type character, but also has like this really zany side in certain parts that really tips the scales on this movie for me that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan as well. I mean, you said everything I would have also.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough because I know we're gonna get into our superlatives, but I think everyone understands what movie they're in, and
Yeah.
I think everyone kind of is just there to have fun, and they take it seriously without taking it overly seriously. And I really don't think there's a weak link. I think everyone's kind of at an even playing field, and maybe we'll get
I
into it
agree.
when we talk about our superlatives. But it's hard to find an actor that is the worst because I think everyone is doing pretty well. You know what I mean? I didn't even have one written down for the worst, and I don't want to segue us necessarily into superlatives if you have other things to say, but I really don't have a worst actor in this. Like, I really think everyone does a good job, and if I had to pick the worst, it would only be what's her name? Samantha Mathis, because she's the least like showy. She's doing the least like
Yeah.
silly stuff. So like her performance is just kind of more even keel. But that's not necessarily a negative on her performance, even as much as it is just everyone else is like giving it like 110%. She's just like doing a really good
She's the
performance, but
straight
she's
character.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like it's her character's kind of the more one note of the group. That's why I don't like it. But she's doing a great job. You know, like I don't have a worse
yeah.
actor.
I actually let's pivot into superlatives because
Cool.
I agree with you. I wrote down and all of my here's the thing. All of my superlatives have asterisks beside them because my bad ones are not bad. They're just notable, and my good ones are good. But my worst actor, I picked Hopper, and not because he was bad, but because of how much he reminded me of Trump. Like there was a little bit of a discomfort, which is a good thing. I did not have a problem with the performance at all. I
The
like
one
how
thing
when he's
I
describing that
yeah,
that he evolved from a T-Rex, he is doing this the whole time. Like
yes.
he's pretending
It's a
he's got
funny
short
character
arms.
choice. I was gonna say, what is the whole dunking his hands in the thing and wiping them off with tissues? What is all that?
He's afraid of germs, so he's paraffin waxing his hands to keep the germs
Oh,
off.
okay. I didn't really get because I was also just like I've never seen anyone actually like do that with wax and stuff. And also tissues
I've never
feels like a
seen that
weird
either,
thing to
but
get
that's
wax
the
off your
idea.
hands. Like whenever a tissue gets wet, it's useless. Like I feel like you need like a paper towel or a towel. That's
Right.
just a little detail. Who is your actor that elevated the material though? Like if you have to pick
Okay,
one.
for me, and I love all these people, and like I said, I love Hoskins. So, but he's not the one I'm choosing. I feel like that's too obvious. My actors who elevate material, there's actually two of them, and that is Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson as Iggy and Spike.
Nice.
They understood the assignment. They knew the movie that they were in probably better than anybody else in this movie. And not only that, but they got to play multiple versions of the same character. They got to play the dumb version and then the really smart dumb version. Those guys make me laugh. I like Fisher Stevens anytime. He's one of those like bit guys that I see in a lot of things where I'm just like, gosh, I just really like it when he's in movies. But
he's in Succession right now. I don't know if you're watching.
Yeah, I'm not caught up, but I do know that he is on it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Iggy and Spike, Fish Stevens and Richard Edson, those are my actors that elevated it just because they're just so funny and they get it. Like they're so on top of it.
We're on a similar wavelength because I also picked two actors. I didn't pick the same two, but I picked Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo just because I think they are the leads and they command it every time they're on screen. It's kind of like the thing you were saying earlier where like the main character is sometimes the least interesting thing about the movie. I don't think that's the case here. I think it's actually like the two of them work really well together. I love how different they are, but how they still feel like brothers. They have that dynamic. And I think, if these were two worse actors, I don't know if they would have been as successful. And it could have really leaned into the so bad it's good or even so bad it's bad territory. And I think because they are doing a good job, it's a good, good movie because of it.
Right. Okay. I completely agree. Absolutely. I love them so much. And as I've already gushed about how much I love Bob Hoskins. Okay. Worst line of dialogue. There's not really one. I mean, it's all pretty much fine. I do have one written down here and I've already referenced it. And the only reason is because it is a ridiculous line, and that's why I've chosen it. But it is one of my favorites, which is name Mario, last name Mario. Okay, what's your name? Luigi. Luigi Mario. Okay, look, how many Marios are there between the two of you? There's 3. There's Mario, and Luigi Mario. Mike, can you help these Marios around the side? I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
I love that interaction
It's so
very
good.
much.
So good. Yeah, it's so good because it's so silly. I picked one line that stood out that made me roll my eyes. It's the only line. And because all this is like cheesy, can be fun. It was when they're talking about like how it doesn't look like Brooklyn anymore. Like there's that Wizard of Oz thing where like I don't think we're in Brooklyn anymore. And then there's like there used to be this, there used to be that, and Mario goes, yeah, there used to be Dodgers here too, and that just annoys me because I'm like, by this point, I don't remember exactly when the Dodgers went to LA, but it's like one of those things where it's like we don't really care. We got the Yankees, we got the Mets. Who cares about the Dodgers? Like right now, they're like LA Dodgers. They're so good, but everyone kind of hates them because they're good, and it's like whatever. Like it was just a corny line, but again, it's because I'm a baseball fan. I was like, who cares? Who cares that Dodgers used to be here? Because I
That sounds
never
like
hear
someone
anyone.
who's not from Brooklyn, Dill.
True, I'm not from Brooklyn, but I'm close enough where I should ask some of my friends from Brooklyn. I'm like, do you all still miss the Dodgers? Like, do you all still bring that up? But I guess maybe the 90s is a little closer to the time. But
Yeah.
like, who cares? They left. You got two good teams. You got a great team. The Yankees are doing great. They won again tonight. Okay, what is your frame wreck or train wreck scene?
Okay, my train wreck moment of the
Moment.
movie. We're on a theme here, which is much like the rest of them. It's not really a train wreck moment, although it is. It is the one moment that I point to and go, "That's not good what they did," and that
Wait,
is.
I think it might be the same as mine. Go ahead.
I don't know if I maybe. It's actually just a moment, which is when Mario is about to fall through the portal and he just falls over, and he's so close to it that he should just fall into it. But then they cut to him falling into it, and he's completely flipped upside down and then falling through it. That's the the train wreck moment for me on this. And it's not because it's like ruins the movie or anything like that. It's just like the point where I'm like, okay, they could have thought about the continuity of him falling sideways and then suddenly being upside down as he falls into it. But that's really it for me. What's yours?
Gotcha. Mine is a little different. It is just a moment as well, and it's only one because at the time they didn't know, but it's one that disturbed me. Is when everything's kind of disappearing, and there's that shot of the Twin Towers getting like
Oh
kind of
gosh.
yeah.
Those guys will do anything for publicity.
That to me, I just like kind of like shuddered a little bit inside. It was a little weird to watch. And obviously they couldn't have known. They didn't know.
Right.
I doubt anyone who was involved in that watched this movie as inspiration, and that'd be fucked if they did. But like, it was one of those things where I saw it, I was just like, ugh, like that's just
I
that
remember
rubbed me the
that,
wrong way.
yeah.
And I've since looked around, and people do bring attention to it too. They're like, yeah, this happened. So it's a little awkward to watch, but it's not the worst thing because it's
Right.
they didn't know.
That obviously was not an intentional thing or even a mistake. Like
Yeah.
it just happened to have happened.
Yeah, it's a sad irony. Yeah.
8 years later or whatever. Like it was,
Yeah.
but it was. I remember. While I was watching it, I was just like, "Oh my god!" And as I was watching it, that image of it happening, of not 9/11 happening, but of that scene happening, me watching it when I was a kid, popped into my head, and I was like, "Oh gosh, this has always been there. I remember this happening, but I've never connected it until now." And I'm like, "Oh geez." I remember. Let me tell you. I remember I worked at a movie theater, not 2000. Yeah, 2001 and 2002, or kind of going into in 2001, going into 2002. 9/11 happened. Basically, I worked at the movie theater when 9/11 happened. And the posters for Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man, had already come out. Like the movie wasn't going to be coming out until the next year, but the posters were already out. And reflected in his eyes are the Twin Towers. Those Sony immediately sent out a thing that says take those down. They sent us some more without the Twin Towers in them. Basically, at that time, everybody was getting the Twin Towers the hell out of their movies and promotional stuff. Like they were like, we're not doing that. Which is why it's so cool that Spike Lee, who was making 25th Hour at the time, added scenes of the Twin Towers into that movie. He was like, we are not these things existed. We're not going to pretend like they didn't exist.
Yeah, I was gonna say Martin Scorsese also put it in Gangs of New York too, in the scene where like you see old New York become New York, New York. Like they had a shot of it, and then it disappeared. Like it's haunting. Yeah, it's all about context, and so that's why it rubbed me the wrong way. But like I understand it's not like the movie's fault, you know. And then one other moment is just the end, just because I hate when they tease sequels, but like they didn't know. But
I'm actually the other way. I love when a movie teases a sequel. I hate that they didn't have a sequel. Like it's the same with Dungeons and Dragons last week. Like, damn, I really wish we had gotten to see that movie. I really wish we had gotten to see the second.
Yeah, I think if we get a second one, this one's fine. But I hate when it like teases a sequel and we never got it, because I'm like, now it's useless. But I get it. It creates. You never know. Maybe they'll make a sequel someday. Who knows?
Here's the thing: the last two movies we watched teased a sequel, didn't have a sequel. MattmanXIII teased a sequel. I didn't necessarily want that sequel, but again, I guess we did pitch a good sequel, so I do want it now. But that one didn't make me go, "Gosh, I really wish that I could see that next movie." The other two did. So that's a testament to this movie that I am sad that there's not a second movie.
So here's the thing: we're gonna pitch the MattmanXIII sequel's happening, the Dungeons and Dragons Jumanji thing's happening. We're gonna pitch the next sequel to this as well, which is where it's a post 9/11 world. King Koopa has been indicted of a crime, and unfortunately Mario has passed, because we're not going to recast Bob Hoskins. Why would we? And it's all about John Leguizamo, Luigi mourning him and kind of like coming into his own by himself. I think there's some cool stuff that could come to that. So
I think we could get a really cool. I think we get a really good drama out of that. There's the most recent, or I don't know if it's most recent, but recently Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did a run called The Last Ronin, which is basically it's set after all but one turtle has died.
Oh,
so
is it like a comic or is it like an actual movie?
It's a comic book that they're actually about to make into a God of War style game. But it's I'm not going to spoil which, because they hold off for a little bit on which turtle survives. But it's basically it's this turtle living with the weight of his family's legacy on his back. Literally, he's got all of their weapons on his back, and just kind of it's really sad, but really, really good. We could get that with Luigi. Mario's gone. Luigi's carrying the legacy.
Well, then it goes on to like maybe we do a Luigi's Mansion, and like that's the backdrop, and then we do like in a Luigi's Mansion, do a full-on horror movie with John Leguizamo, and then we could even make a third movie where it's like Mad Max Fury Road, but Mario Kart, and it's like in this dystopian. They have to get to Rainbow Road to restore humanity and build this dystopian wasteland into something rich and plentiful again.
Everything except Dino Hatton is desert on that planet, so.
There you go. So make a Mad Max Fury Road with Mario Kart. It'd be so good. I think we should make Mario movies live action. Like let them do the animation stuff with Illumination, but like we should tackle some more live action movies. I think we should pitch it. Matt, is there anything else superlative wise? I mean, this is not going on Mount Trashmore. We're not even going to discuss it because it's a good movie. For those who don't know, Mount Trashmore is where we put bad movies on the Mount Rushmore of bad movies. But this one, we're not even going to show it because it's not going to even get close to it.
No, in fact, this one goes on the other board that we're just probably going to have to make a graphic for, which is the movies that are good actually. And this is probably going to have to go with Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and Twilight.
Yeah, what can we call that? Like redeem? I don't know. Something about like redemption. We'll
workshop it.
We'll workshop it. But yeah, good idea. And what's the score you're going to give it, Matt?
See, this was so hard. So I went right down the middle, even though I don't necessarily feel that it's one way or the other. I gave it 2.5 nostalgias out of 5 because I just like this movie, and I don't really it's almost an abstention from scoring it.
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah, it's like I'm
2.5.
not going to give this like a 5-star review on like a positive scale, but I'm also not going to give it the 5-star because on our show it's like we rate things based on how bad they're good, and I don't think it would come close to a 5-star because a 5-star is like the worst, the best of the worst, you know. So I'm going to go with a two Koopa coins out of 5, just because Koopa coins is fun to say. All right, well that's Mario, Matt. I'm glad we kind of like came here and defended it together. Because I hate when, well, it never really happens, but where one of us likes something, one of us doesn't, or vice versa. You know, we're usually on the same page, but like this one especially, like it seems we both really want to champion this film. So go see it, go give it another shot, people, especially with the new one coming out. And hey, the new one, for all the great things it may be, which we don't know, well, I'm seeing it tonight, but for all the great things it may be, it will not have an animatronic Yoshi dinosaur.
Mhm.
It will not have Toad playing a harmonica like that. And it will not have Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. So
That's true.
yeah,
Absolutely true. I one thing I don't want to. I'm not going to go into the legacy because there's so much.
Oh right.
But I do recommend people go onto the Wikipedia for this movie and read about the reception and the and everything that happened after the movie came out, because it's actually kind of wild. But it's just so much that I'm not going to get into it right now. But let's talk about next month. Next month we're going to next month we're going to be on theme with Dyl Pickle Movie Network. I don't know if you've announced the theme.
Yeah, I can talk about it now. Every May, which it just became May. I don't know why May is the designated month. Probably because it's like before summer movies really kick off and like after Oscars, so it's a good time. I like to do a 10 years retrospective because there are so many movies. This period of movies, like the early 2010s, is like the times where like I was finally going to movies like by myself, going to see all the Oscar movies, going to see movies at a grander scale. It kind of started with Dark Knight in 2008, but like 2008 to like 2015, I was really like growing as a film fan until I went to college and then like was full-fledged movie pass and all. So like I wanted to go back and like look at these movies 10 years later and see which ones have gotten better, which ones I just liked at the time, which ones I underestimated. And I've been doing this past few years. During the pandemic, I did it for 2010. I did it for 2011 when I first started the channel, and I did it last year for 2012. We talked about Battleship for it, and we found out that Battleship was just a genuinely bad movie. And so I'm really excited to do it again for the movies of 2013, because this was also another pivotal point where, by spoiler alert, my favorite movie of the year won Best Picture for the first time, and that had never happened before. So that's another fun thing. But maybe I'll rewatch it and not feel the same way. So Picture This, we're doing 2013 for Picture This. We're doing 2013 stuff on Marvelous Movie Mondays, talking about stuff like Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World. And we're talking about 2013 here, Matt. So why don't you tell us, Matt, what we officially decided? Because I don't even know yet. I'm going to be surprised by Matt now. What we're going to be talking about for 2013 as our 10 years later retrospective to see, is it really a bad movie? Is it so bad it's good? Is it actually good? What are we talking about that we're throwing it back 10 years later for?
Well, so we have a rule on this show that excludes certain movies that people have wanted us to talk about. So any movie, so the movies, in order to be considered for Framewreck, have to not be aware that they're bad. Like, they can't be self-aware. It's the reason I've said before, we're not going to watch Velocipaster. It knows what it is. It's trying to be what it is. However, there is a movie that came out in 2013 that I've actually never seen, that kicked off a series of self-aware bad movies. But I don't know how. I always said we weren't going to do this because that series knows what it is. But I've come to understand that the first Sharknado might not be as self-aware as the rest of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to visit Sharknado, which I haven't seen.
I've never seen it either. Yeah.
So we're going to visit Sharknado. This test is not necessarily if it's bad, because we all know it's bad, but if it's actually bad or if it's trying to be bad. Because when you have a series,
when you have a series after the first one, you know, like if they're making The Room, well, I'm not going to say The Room because Tommy Wiseau probably still doesn't know, but let's, like Troll 3, if they were to make Troll 3, and they might have, I don't know. If those guys were to make Troll 3, they'd probably be like, you know what? People like Troll 2, but not for those reasons. Like Mac and Me 2. If they were to make Mac and Me 2, they would either make it so bad on purpose, which doesn't make it good, or you could just stumble into making another movie where you're like, well, let's redeem it, and then it's also bad. Sharknado has had so many sequels to where at this point it feels like they're in on the joke. But is that because the first one was so bad and they didn't realize? That's what we're going to find out. So I'm really excited.
That is what we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Actually, a good example of what you were talking about with sequels is Birdemic 2, which is still bad, but they know what the first one was enough to know where to hit it so that to try to entertain us. So it's while still bad, genuinely, it is also self-aware.
Yeah. And just so we can talk about a movie from 10 years ago and see how it's aged as well, because maybe we'll watch it and be like, this is an underrated masterpiece like we did today. So who knows? But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Matt, where else can they find you if not here? And what else do you got to plug? Because we probably won't talk for now, probably a whole month.
I am MattmanXIII on Letterboxd and Twitter. You'll find me here on the Dyl Pickle Movie Network, not on this show for the rest of the month, but next month you will. I don't know what else I'll be doing on this show, on the channel this month, if anything. Oh, we still owe them a commentary for Troll 2. Hopefully that's happening this month.
Yeah, that'll happen this month. So you will hear Matt again. And this works because now we're so early in the month that like we can release it later in the month, Troll 2. But we'll definitely do that this month. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. And you can find me at the Dyl Pickle Movie Network if you're watching. If you're listening, thanks for listening. Go to the Dyl Pickle Podcast if you're watching and want to listen to it. Dylan_Randazzo at Twitter and Letterboxd. And there's currently a poll up now, which is still up this week on the Facebook page, where if you guys paid attention, we hit 500 subscribers. We actually hit 1,000 subscribers on the subathon. So what we're going to do is we're going to, because of 500, I'm going to wear an embarrassing item of clothing for an entire month on the channel. I'm thinking that'll be June. So if you want to make me wear either a baby bonnet and bib, a Friends bikini t-shirt, a Christmas Story bunny onesie, or a Red Sox hat, you can vote on that poll because all four would make me miserable for different reasons. So Framewreck, so bad it's good. So give me an outfit that's so bad it's good. Otherwise, check out this episode. Check out Dungeons and Dragons episode. It was so cool, especially if you're a nerd who's into Dungeons and Dragons. We had a great guest, Mike Sayer, on, who knew everything about Dungeons and Dragons. Matt knows everything about Dungeons and Dragons, and listening to them talk is so fun for a Dungeons and Dragons fan, especially if you've seen the new one and the old one and want to like compare or whatever. We haven't talked about the new one on there, but just a lot of interesting things that they bring up that I then, after seeing the new one, I'm like, they would have liked that choice. And I'm sure Matt, from looking at his letterbox, you all know Matt loves the new one too.
I do.
Yes, but check out that episode too, because it was so fun having Mike on and just talking about that movie. And check out all the stuff. Our Twilight episode's also really, really dope. All the episodes are dope because this guy's dope and I'm kind of dope. But that was Dylan Mario and Matt Luigi Mario. We'll see you next time with our Troll 2 commentary and then with Sharknado. See y'all.
What a story, Mark.